The three fingers consisted of an extra three phalanges in each finger. Compared to the three phalanges we have in a human finger, she had six, which means that her fingers were twice as length as a human's. I could not see any signs of a thumb or another finger being removed. It looked that the hands were as part of the body and connected to the body as normal. She had dermal ridging on her fingers and her toes. And what was really interesting is that I looked at these dermal ridges, and the dermal ridges are very unusual. They're very horizontal. And it's not the typical swirls and shapes that you get in fingerprints. You know, you kind of get three different types of fingerprints. You get arching, haws, and swirls. It didn't really match any of them, you know, and that was unusual. So I managed to get some really good close-up photographs to do comparison study on that. Same for the feet. The feet, three long toes, extra phalanges, even complete with nail, and the dermal ridging. And I just really didn't know what I was looking at. I also noticed there was a slightly larger gap between the ulna and the radius in the arm, the two bones in the arm. There was a slightly larger gap than what we'd normally see. And she was sat up in the sitting position, which we often see in regards to Peruvian mummies, sat up in a sitting position with her arms wrapped around her knees. And she was covered in all this white, I didn't know what it was at the time, white powder. So, of course, we took photographs, we took video, and we looked at the scans and the X-rays, and we thanked the guys very much. We said, look, you know, we just want to document this, and they were good with that. And we went back to the hotel. But at that point, we started to realize about the secrecy that's involved here, because we know the police are looking for these, we know the Peruvian government's all over it, and there was a national, or some would say an international press conference going to be held a few days later in the capital of Peru, Lima, and that was going to be carried out by Jamin and a number of his associates as doctors. Now, I was aware that Jaime had been looking into these, and we met up with Jaime at Lima, and we was good enough to allow us to interview him. I asked him about, you know, has he had any support from the government? And he said no. He said that he'd been to the ministry, the government. They don't want to know. They sent him away. They don't want to communicate with him. They kept it very low key. None of the press in Lima had covered anything about the international press announcement. So nobody really knew. We went out on the streets, and now we talked to taxi cab guys. And you know what? You want to find out something? Those are the guys that know everything. You know, so, but do you know what was surprising, Grant? None of them had a clue that this was happening right under their noses. The ministry building, which is literally only around the corner, and they didn't want to know, but they did something quite unusual. On the night prior to the actual international press announcement, I was in the actual hotel where it was taking place. The Peruvian government had managed somehow to get 3,000, and don't ask me how they managed to do this, but according to this document that they'd released and a webinar over the internet in Peru, they'd managed to get thousands of doctors together to deliver a concise conclusion that all these bodies were fake, and that obviously they can't be trusted. Grave robbers it happens. They've got a problem in the Peru with the black market, and of course it's something that they cannot handle. And what was interesting to me is that how does 3,000 doctors come forward and give their conclusions on a body that is clearly they're saying is fake, without actually ever examining her, without even visiting and going to have a look at her? This conclusion was made in regards to things they could scavenge over the internet, to be honest. And that was probably the most shocking, unscientific procedure I'd ever seen. And it showed me, and it demonstrated to me that the necessity for the Peruvian government to really hammer home that these things are fake, and they'll go to any lengths to do so. And I was suspicious about that. I wanted to know the reasons why. So the following day, I visited the ministry, a woman who works for the Peruvian government in regarding the black market. And it suddenly came to light why the Peruvian government are doing this. Because it turns out Maria had a price tag of $1 million on her head. The smaller bodies, which I didn't consider them much anyway, had a price tag of $200,000 on the heads. Some items had already apparently been sold to some Japanese who'd visited the location and gone and took that away with them. Don't know how they get these out, but they do. And it was a real big problem. And because they wanted to make sure this body, whatever it represented, was to stay in Peru, they wanted to make sure they'll discourage anybody from purchasing it by saying it's fake and having all these doctors come forward and do so. So there was this kind of internal battle that was going on between the Riqueros trying to sell these things on the black market and, of course, the Peruvian government trying to dismiss them as hoaxes. And we were caught up in the middle of this. And, of course, what happened on the day, and this was also quite shocking, is that on the day of the international press announcement in Lima, Jaime Maussan, we were there to film officially on behalf of the Inkari Institute, and it was their case. They were dealing with the bodies. We had official IDs, and we were told, under no circumstances are we allowed to film at the international press announcement. And I said, what? You know, this is an international press announcement. You've got people coming from all over the world with cameras. They're coming through the door. I can see them, you know, in the troves. How can we not film? Well, we can't do it unless we give you the rights, and we have to talk to somebody who works here. Well, can we ask? That person's not here yet. Well, come back in an hour. So, you know, so we went to the room, and they wouldn't even allow us in the room to set up a camera. All these people are all walking around outside thinking, what the hell's going on? It's an international press announcement. The hotel's been paid for. The room's been paid for. Surely these guys all want to do their filming. They're all from the news teams and reporters from all over the world. And yet they're all wandering around thinking what's going on because nobody's getting any confirmation that they can do any filming. So it turns out, and I think it was from somebody from Spain actually said, oh, I'm not having this. Goes flying in there and sets up his camera anyway. And that's what kind of happened, because officially, if we were to hold off and say, okay, we can't do no filming until we get permission to do so from the management in the hotel, none of it would have been filmed, Grant. None of us got permission. In fact, everybody just went, you know, gung-ho and just decided to go for it themselves. I'm not traveling all the way halfway around the world, not filming. So they just went for it, and the staff couldn't deal with it. There were too many people with video cameras to say, okay, well, let's not do it.
What was the noise? You had that noise that was going on. What happened there?
Oh, well, that was done on purpose, because I went downstairs, and the hotel staff were actually turning people away. There were still people coming through the door saying, where's this international press announcement about these bodies? Oh, we don't know anything about it. Never heard about it. You must have got the wrong hotel. They're sending them away. And I'm thinking, what is going on here? And it worked out. I think what's going on is that someone had maybe had a call to the hotel and put the pressure on. We don't want this out, low key. We don't want it happening. It's happening under our noses. The ministry building's only around the corner. And I think the hotel were kind of going along with it and trying to make things as difficult as they possibly could. Jaime wasn't going to have any of it, of course. Jaime, being Jaime, I'm going for it. And he starts to open up the ceremony, you know, the press announcement, and all of a sudden, all this banging from next door, and it was honestly gone. It was like there must have been about 20 guys next door going like this on the walls. That's what it sounded like. I immediately went. We had to stop the press announcement because we're watching world cameras all being switched off because they can't hear anything. So all these cameras all being switched off. People are running around thinking, "What's all this noise? What's going on?" I approached the staff there. They weren't helping. I said, what's all the noise? Oh, I don't know. And this, that. I said, no, we need to stop. We need to get this sorted, you know. And this went on for a good half an hour, Grant, until we managed to resolve it and get it going again. And after that, Jaime went through his presentation, showing the different bodies. Now, he did have 3 doctors with him. And these doctors had been involved in numerous other projects with Jaime, I believe. At least 1 or 2 of them. I recognise the names. And we went back and finally met up again with Thierry from the Inkari Institute, where we were giving files and documents and all sorts of things from the x-rays and scans. And they signed an official a document with us, a contract, showing that we were representing them. And we headed back to the UK. Now, this is where it starts getting very interesting, Grant, because we wanted to make sure when we wanted to have some analysis done ourselves. But be honest with you, we really didn't know who to trust. We didn't want to trust the people, other people, what they've done, their analysis, because we don't know how credible it is. You know, as far as I'm aware, I wasn't aware. I mean, I followed all the other records and all these other people that have been in there and done their little bits of examinations, but I'm not seeing any chain of custody anywhere, Grant. It would seem it's been completely overlooked. I mean, to be honest with you, our scientists, which are based in Sri Lanka at the Gene Tech Laboratory, they're the ones that train the CSIs, the CSI police. Our guy said, let's have a look at the scans. Let's have a look at what we've got. They looked at the small ones. They said, yeah, you know, they could be manufactured. Okay, but what about Maria? Because these are the bodies, Maria and Wawita. This is what we wanted to focus on. And they looked at them, Grant, and they got them up on the screens. And the doctors, look, these are professors, and we haven't named them yet because they want to conduct more tests. But if we get that third lot of tests done, they're going to come forward. Now, these guys are known. Their names are known in world community. They've been on television countless times in science programs and things. They looked at these scans, and they went. It was quite a funny scene. Three or four of them are looking at this scan of Maria and the X-rays, and they're chatting amongst each other. Then they go away and they bring in another doctor. Then they're chatting and whispering to each other. Then they go away and bring in another doctor. And at the end of this, they walk up to us and say, we would like to commission you to go back and arrange for DNA samples to be taken for us to do this. Now, that told me something. That told me straight away that they're seeing something in these x-rays and scans of Maria that they're intrigued about and they want to know more about. And for them to commission that, I thought, okay, that's interesting. So the whole process of that, which was a little bit difficult, we had to have a proper chain of custody done. So our professors had to talk with the doctors in Peru. And the doctors in Peru were instructed by our scientists how and where to take those DNA samples. And they had to be numerous different ones from different locations. We wanted, because I asked the question, has anybody taken DNA sample from the hand to prove that it's associated to the body? And they said, no, we don't want people touching the hands. Well, that's no good when you're trying to identify something. So that was made sure that was on the list. And it was agreed that those samples could be taken, that our scientists were going to guide them through that process and a proper chain of custody delivered. So we had a second trip back to Peru, was carried out about a week later after us getting back. And the doctors were there, and they were instructed by our scientists where to take the samples, how, and we had to actually record everything, record the process of where those samples were taken, and when they were actually record them going into the bag and sealed and dated and time-stamped, because without a chain of custody, you can't prove the results are from that DNA sample. We could have been swapped, changed, altered, and we make sure that we've got to have that evidence. That's the most important thing to have, which I don't think anybody else has really done. And that was done thoroughly, very thoroughly by the doctors there. Deep core samples, hair samples as well from the smaller one, the Wawita, scrapings from the body, a skin sample, the white powder. We wanted to know what that was. Now, we'd already been told that it was diatomaceous earth by somebody else's analysis. However, we wanted to confirm that. So we've got all these, and all these are all mailed back, to specially mailed so that they can't be tampered with, to the universities, to the laboratory in Sri Lanka. And they conducted their tests. And we had to wait a long time because analysis on like this just takes forever. And there is no rush job. We actually were attempting to grow DNA, and this is quite a new process. And they wanted to make sure they got mitochondrial DNA and metadNA, to really go to town on exactly what does Maria represent. Well, after quite some time of waiting, the results came in. And the first thing that we looked at was the age, the carbon dating of Maria.